What happens when a powerful billionaire witnesses a quiet act of dignity that shifts his entire world? This story follows a wealthy father, a disabled boy, and a waitress whose compassion sparks a journey none of them expected. Watch till the end, and comment below where you're watching from. Let's dive in. The hum of silverware and soft piano filled the air at Lenox and Row, one of the most prestigious restaurants in Midtown Manhattan. That night, the room held its usual air of exclusivity, tight smiles, designer heels, and low conversations that floated above expensive wine glasses. But in a single moment, that calm shattered into stunned silence. All eyes turned toward the open space between tables, where a young boy stood trembling. 10-year-old Ethan Cole, legs encased in metal braces, reached out a shaking hand toward a woman in a black uniform, Maya Thompson, the restaurant's only black waitress. The live pianist had just started playing a slow, lilting melody. It was quiet, almost delicate, and for a reason no one would ever fully understand. Ethan had decided to ask someone to dance. The restaurant manager, Gregory Harlan, sliced through the air with a sharp command. "Sir, control your son," he snapped at the corner table where the billionaire Grant Cole sat frozen. "This isn't a dance hall, and our staff are not here to entertain children." Grant, CEO of the massive Cole International, felt his throat tighten. It was the first time he had brought Ethan out in public since the accident 2 years earlier, a car crash that left his son with limited mobility and more emotional scars than any therapist could mend. "And now this? Ethan, sit down," he said, voice low but firm. But Maya didn't move. She looked between her manager, the billionaire, and the boy whose small hand still hovered in the air. She had learned in her 5 years working at Lenox and Row to disappear when the powerful entered the room. Especially men like Grant Cole. But not this time. "Mr. Harlan," she said quietly, removing her apron, "my shift is over." Then, to everyone's astonishment, she stepped forward, smiled at Ethan, and took his hand. "Can't dance in an apron. Can I?" Grant rose from his chair sharply. "What do you think you're doing?" Maya met his stare, accepting an invitation. Before anyone could stop them, Ethan dragged his foot forward with effort. The screech of metal braces echoed like a siren. But Maya didn't hurry him. She didn't guide him. She simply moved with him, at his pace. "She's getting fired," someone whispered behind a wine glass. Grant stood frozen, memories flooding in. His late wife, Abigail, once danced with Ethan in the living room. "It's not about being perfect," she used to say. "It's about being present." Maya's face remained calm as she followed Ethan's clumsy rhythm. His expression transformed, fear giving way to concentration. Then quiet pride. For the first time in 2 years, Ethan wasn't being helped. He was leading. "Mr. Cole," Manager Harlan interrupted, his voice brittle. "This won't happen again. I'll make sure she's disciplined properly." But Grant said nothing. The room watched him, waiting. He could end Maya's career with a single nod. Instead, Ethan's small voice cut through the tension. "Thank you for dancing with me," he said formally, like a little gentleman. Maya smiled. "The honor was mine." She turned to leave, but Grant called after her. His voice, so often cold and calculated, sounded almost human. "Wait, what's your full name?" "Maya Thompson, sir." He nodded, repeating it under his breath like a note he didn't want to forget. Then he pulled a card from his inside pocket and handed it to her. "My office, tomorrow, 10 a.m. Everyone inhaled at once. Maya took the card with a steady face, though her fingers trembled slightly. As she walked away, Ethan turned to his father and asked a question no amount of money could shield him from. "Why did you do that?" Grant had no answer. Dinner resumed in stiff silence. No one noticed the determined glance Maya gave before she left, not out of fear, but resolve. She'd seen the storm brewing behind Grant's eyes. But she wasn't afraid of storms. She had survived worse. The next morning, the sun gleamed off the glass walls of Cole Tower. Maya, dressed in her best navy skirt and second-hand white blouse, felt out of place the moment she stepped inside. The suits around her looked like they had never even glanced at a clearance rack. Her shoes were polished, but old. Her purse, clutched to her chest, was worn at the edges. "Maya Thompson to see Mr. Cole," she told the receptionist, who looked her over before making a call. 18th floor. Ms. Warren will take you. In the elevator, Maya took a slow breath. Not out of fear, but because she'd walked into the unknown before. And she was still standing. When the doors opened, a sharply dressed woman in her 40s was waiting, Ms. Lorraine Warren, Grant Cole's executive assistant. Her gaze was cool and her posture perfect. This way, as they walked through the mirrored hallways, Maya felt the stares. A black woman walking through the executive floor raised eyebrows. When they reached a quiet lounge, Lorraine turned to her suddenly. "He had you fired, didn't he?" she asked. Not unkindly, just curious. "No," Maya replied. "Happens all the time. A powerful man makes a call. People like you lose jobs." "People like me?" Maya asked, raising an eyebrow. Lorraine adjusted her glasses. "Employees who don't know their place." Maya smiled faintly. "And where exactly is that?" Before Lorraine could answer, her phone buzzed. "He'll see you now." Grant Cole's office took up half the floor. The windows revealed Manhattan like a kingdom below. The man himself stood by the glass, hands in his pockets, unmoving. "Mr. Cole," Maya said evenly. He turned, his expression unreadable. "Ms. Thompson, thank you for coming." He motioned for her to sit. She did. The silence was strategic. Maya had seen that trick before. Let them squirm. Fill the air with nervous words. But she stayed still. Finally, he broke it. "What's your background?" "Excuse me?" "Education. Training. Bachelor's in Child Development. NYU. Didn't finish my master's, special education. Had to leave school to support my family." Grant blinked. "And you work as a waitress?" "I work 3 jobs. The restaurant, a bookstore on weekends, and I tutor, when I can find students." He nodded slowly, then picked up a folder from his desk. "I looked into you." Maya didn't flinch. He opened the folder. Inside were photos of a small studio. Children dancing with walkers and wheelchairs. A sign read, "Freedom Motion." "You founded this?" "Co-founded. With my sister. It's shutting down. We're short on funding." Maya replied. "I thought you came to ask for help." "No," she said plainly. "You invited me." That actually made him chuckle, dry and joyless. He stood and paced. "I want you to work for me." Maya blinked. "As what? A waitress in your mansion?" Grant turned serious. "As a companion. For Ethan. A therapeutic partner." You got him to smile. It was a dance. Mr. Cole. It was the first time he smiled since the accident. "I'm not a therapist. I've hired the best therapists in the country. None of them did what you did. You followed him. You didn't fix him. You let him lead." Maya looked at the billionaire and didn't see power. She saw something else. A man drowning. "I can pay you 5 times what you make now." She stood. "No." His brows drew together. "Why?" "Because I don't work for people who only see my color or my clothes before they see my value. And I definitely don't work for people who try to buy human connection." Grant's cheeks flushed. "You're walking away from a life-changing offer, out of pride?" "Not pride," Maya said calmly. "Dignity. And because your son deserves more than someone paid to care." At the door, she paused and placed a small card on his desk. "Freedom Motion. Tuesdays and Thursdays. 4 p.m. First class is free, if you want to bring him." She walked past Lorraine again, who clearly had been listening. "You turned him down?" she whispered. "Are you out of your mind?" "Maybe," Maya said, "but better that than being owned." That Thursday afternoon, a black Bentley pulled up to the curb in front of the old red brick community center in the Bronx. The building looked like it belonged to another era, weathered by time and painted with fresh hope. Hand-painted signs clung to its windows, one of them reading, "Every step counts." Maya was helping a boy adjust the straps on his walker when she saw her sister Zoe rushing in from the hallway. "There's a Bentley outside," Zoe whispered, wide-eyed. "And guess who's in it?" Maya didn't even look. "Let me guess. A billionaire who hates to be challenged." Zoe raised an eyebrow. "I still can't believe you turned him down. Are you sure you're not crazy?" "I've been sure since the first time someone called me, girl, in a room full of interns." Maya replied, grinning. "I know who I am." She glanced out the window. There, in the backseat of the Bentley, Ethan sat anxiously, his braces glinting faintly in the summer light. Grant sat in the driver's seat, unmoving. "He's not coming in," Zoe predicted. adjusting her hijab. Men like that don't walk into places like this. Don't underestimate the power of a determined son, Maya murmured. And then the door opened. Ethan stepped out first, slowly but purposefully. He adjusted the cuffs of his brace, looked at the building, then back at the car. Grant hesitated. His fingers were still wrapped around the steering wheel like it was the last thing he could control. But when Ethan turned and waited for him, Grant sighed and got out. He looked uncomfortable in his attempt at casual wear, pressed slacks and a cashmere sweater that screamed privilege even in its softness. Still, he was here. I told you he'd come, Maya said, more to herself than to Zoe. Inside, the energy of freedom motion was unmistakable. The center buzzed not with strict routines, but with joy. Children moved freely, some spinning in wheelchairs, others dancing with crutches or prosthetics, each moving at their own pace. Maya approached them at the entrance. She wore jeans and a fitted t-shirt with the program's logo. Her hair was tied up, and her smile was warm but composed. "Welcome," she said, first to Ethan, then to Grant. Ethan's eyes sparkled as he looked around. A girl nearby completed a perfect spin in her wheelchair. A boy with a prosthetic foot bounced in time with the music, creating a rhythm all his own. "This looks chaotic," Grant muttered. "There's structure," Maya said, "just not the kind you're used to." She turned to Ethan. "Would you like to join?" Ethan looked uncertain, then up at his father. "Go ahead," Grant said, stiffly. "I'll stay right here." Maya guided Ethan gently toward a group of kids. He joined without hesitation, mimicking the movements of another boy with leg braces. As they moved, Zoe approached Grant. "First day's always the hardest," she said. "For the kids? For the parents? This isn't therapy," Grant argued, watching Maya interact with the children. "I've hired the best specialists for Ethan. Physical therapists, neurologists. This isn't clinical." Zoe tilted her head. "And how's that been working for him?" Before Grant could answer, the door opened again. This time, a striking older woman entered. Her gray hair was braided into a crown, and she leaned on a carved cane. She moved with a regal grace that made the room pause. Zoe whispered, "That's Dr. Elaine Mercer, former neuroscientist, retired from Harvard." The name hit Grant like a punch. "Dr. Mercer? You submitted research proposals to my foundation, and you rejected them 3 times, the woman said, her voice calm but firm. "But I don't hold grudges." Grant stared. "You oversee this program?" "I do. Freedom motion is part of our field study on movement autonomy and neuroplasticity in children with mobility challenges." "Wait, this is research?" Maya returned, brushing her hands together. "It's a pilot rehabilitation model. We're studying how freedom of movement impacts recovery and neural rewiring." "You mean this is scientific? It's not just a dance class." "Mr. Cole, why are you working in a restaurant if you co-run this?" "Because we were denied funding. By people like you." Grant blinked. "You were Dr. Mercer's co-author?" "Lead co-author," Dr. Mercer corrected. "Maya was my top graduate student. She left her master's program early to care for her family. But her theories on adaptive motion have changed how we look at motor therapy." Grant exhaled. "You knew who I was. At the restaurant. I recognized you the moment you walked in." Maya replied, "But I didn't dance with your son because of that. I danced with him because he asked." Grant looked at her, realization dawning. Was it staged? Absolutely not. Ethan led. I followed. Just then, a few reporters walked into the studio. Grant tensed immediately. "What is this?" "Part 2 of the plan," Maya said softly. Zoe held up a freshly printed article, "Revolutionary New Movement Therapy for Disabled Children. We released our first research findings today," Dr. Mercer explained, "and invited the press to witness the program firsthand." "You used my son," Grant said, his voice cold. "For publicity." Maya stepped closer. "I used the opportunity 4 months ago, when you rejected our proposal again without reading it. I promised myself I'd find another way. You manipulated me. I presented you with a choice. You responded. That's not manipulation. That's strategy." Just then, Zoe burst into the room. "It's Ethan." They all turned. Ethan stood in the center of the dance floor. The music had stopped. Children formed a silent circle around him. The boy had removed one of his leg braces and was attempting to stand, unsupported. "Ethan," Grant called, stepping forward. Maya held him back. "Wait." Ethan steadied himself. His arms trembled, his legs shook, but then, he took a step. Just one. Just his own. The room erupted in cheers. Cameras flashed. Children clapped and cheered like a miracle had happened in front of them. Grant, for the first time in years, felt tears sting his eyes. His son, walking, unprompted, unassisted. That, Maya said, is why we created Freedom Motion. Not to perfect every step, but to celebrate the first one taken freely. Grant didn't speak. His world, his empire, his assumptions, his authority, suddenly felt small in the presence of that single, unsteady step. "You could have just asked for a meeting," he whispered. "I did," Maya replied, 3 times. "You didn't listen." Now he had no choice but to see. Behind him, a reporter approached. "Mr. Cole, do you have a comment?" Grant turned to Maya. "You've cornered me brilliantly." "No," Maya said. "Ethan did. I just followed." The lights of the studio were still on, but the clamor had died down. The reporters got their photos. The kids were gathering their things. Ethan, flushed with pride, was laughing with another boy while balancing carefully on his single brace. Grant stood to the side, looking at him like he was seeing his son for the first time, not as a patient, not as a problem to be fixed, but as someone capable of his own victories. "Mr. Cole," a reporter called, "is it true your foundation denied this program 3 times?" All eyes turned to him again. Grant inhaled sharply and looked toward Ethan, then back at Maya, who waited without pressure. He stepped forward. "You know what's hardest for someone in my position?" he said clearly. "Admitting when we're wrong." The air shifted. The Cole Foundation is officially committing to fund Freedom Motion for the next 5 years. And we're pledging an additional grant to build a full-scale rehabilitation center using the methodology pioneered by Dr. Mercer and Ms. Reynolds. A collective gasp rippled through the room. The reporters surged forward. Zoe covered her mouth in disbelief. But Grant held up his hand. "On one condition," he added, his voice cutting through the noise. "That Ms. Reynolds maintains complete autonomy over the program. No interference, no red tape." Maya didn't smile. Not yet. She simply nodded, her eyes steady. "Agreed." The flash of cameras was blinding. 3 months later, the lot had been cleared. Bulldozers were replaced by steel beams and scaffolding. Maya stood in a hard hat, pointing at blueprints and adjusting the position of future therapy rooms. Every wall was designed for accessibility. Open floor plans, adaptive movement zones, mirrors at child height, no closed doors. Ethan was there, of course. He visited the site every week, often bringing his own ideas. One afternoon, he came with a notebook full of crayon sketches labeled Freedom Garden, a sensory outdoor path with flowers and textured tiles. Maya promised to make it happen. And to everyone's continued surprise, Grant showed up, too. At first, he lingered on the edges, observing. Then he started asking questions, listening, reading. "I never thought I'd find you at construction site meetings," Maya commented one afternoon as they reviewed flooring materials. "I never thought I'd be reading neuroscience journals at midnight," Grant replied, flipping through a packet of Maya's annotated research. Post-it notes were stuck to every page. "What's changed?" she asked. "Ethan asked me if I knew what synaptic plasticity was last week," Grant said with a wry smile. "I figured I'd better keep up." Maya raised an eyebrow. "Is this your version of a public redemption arc?" Grant met her eyes. "Maybe. Or maybe I'm just a father learning how to follow instead of lead." She didn't respond, but her expression softened. He turned the conversation. "Why did you never accept my apology?" "Because you never gave one," she said evenly. "You redirected resources, changed your foundation's policies, gave us funding. That's action, but it's not the same thing." Grant was quiet. "Fair," he said. 6 months later, the opening ceremony drew a crowd of city officials, journalists, community leaders, and dozens of families. The new Freedom Motion Center sparkled in the morning light. Children of all ages filled the wide central hall, using mobility aids of every kind, braces, canes, chairs, each moving to music that pulsed from the open studio doors. Banners fluttered overhead, your pace, your power. Maya stood beside Zoe near the entrance. Their smiles were quiet but full of pride. Every inch of this space had their fingerprints on it. From across the room, Ethan, now wearing only one lightweight brace, waved. Then, to everyone's amazement, he began a choreographed routine with 3 other kids. The steps were simple, but confident. He wasn't just moving, he was leading. Grant stood at the back, hands in his pockets. He said nothing, but he didn't need to. The look in his eyes said it all. Maya approached him quietly. "You don't need to hold his hand anymore," she said. "No," he agreed, voice low, "but I do need to be here." They stood in silence, watching Ethan high-five a younger boy who had just completed a spin in a power chair. "Thank you," Grant said. "For what?" "For teaching me to follow." Just then, a reporter approached. "Mr. Cole, how does it feel to see your son doing this today?" Grant looked at Maya, then back at the group of children now forming into pairs, dancing freely with their chosen partners. "Proud," he said, "not just of what he's overcome, but of what he's helped build." The reporter nodded. "And what's the biggest lesson you've learned through all of this?" Grant hesitated. For a man used to sound bites, this one came slowly. "That real leadership isn't about control," he said. "It's about knowing when to step back and let someone else lead the way." Maya looked at him, not with forgiveness. Not yet, but with something close. Respect. A year later, Freedom Motion had expanded to 4 more cities. The once tiny community program born in a rented dance studio now had waiting lists, national attention, and a growing team of educators and medical professionals trained in Maya's hybrid methodology of adaptive movement and emotional autonomy. Maya stood on a small stage in Washington, D.C., accepting the National Pediatric Rehabilitation Innovation Award. The auditorium was full, but she only looked toward the front row, where Ethan sat next to Zoe. Beaming. Behind them, Grant watched silently. He didn't like the spotlight. He didn't need it. He was there for his son. After the ceremony, a journalist approached Maya for an interview. "You've helped rewrite how we think about childhood rehabilitation. Do you see yourself as a researcher, a teacher, or an activist?" "I see myself," she said, "as someone who decided not to stay invisible." Meanwhile, Ethan was thriving. He now attended a regular public school where he joined the drama club, started drawing comics, and most importantly, become a youth spokesperson for Freedom Motion. In school assemblies and local fundraisers, he told his story with a clarity and confidence that astonished even Grant. One afternoon, Maya found herself in the new rooftop garden of the original center, the one Ethan had sketched a year earlier. He was sitting cross-legged beside a boy who had just joined the program. The boy, shy and unsure, was scared to try standing from his chair. Ethan placed a hand on the boy's shoulder and whispered, "You don't have to rush. Just shift your weight. It's your move, not anyone else's." Maya stood quietly, listening, her heart full. That's what it was all about. Not big speeches, not donor galas. Moments like that, between kids, between breaths. Later that week, Maya hosted a small dinner in her modest apartment. Zoe brought biryani. Grant brought wine, though no one drank much. And Ethan brought his latest invention, a balance board, made from an old skateboard and foam blocks. "Don't break the table," Maya warned, as he tested it with a grin. "I reinforced the bottom this time," Ethan said proudly. "Used real screws." Zoe laughed. "He's been watching too many DIY YouTubers. Better that than whatever he used to binge." Maya murmured. She turned to Grant. "You know, he told a reporter last week he wants to be a movement therapist when he grows up." Grant nodded. "He told me. I think he'll do it." "He will," Maya said simply. They were quiet for a moment, the kind of silence that was warm and earned. Then Grant cleared his throat. "I have something I've been meaning to say." Maya looked at him cautiously. "I'm sorry," he said, "not just for dismissing you, or your work, or what happened that night. I'm sorry for everything I didn't see, for how long it took me to listen, and for thinking I could fix my son without ever really knowing who he was." Maya didn't answer right away. She turned her head slightly, watching Ethan now showing Zoe how to use the balance board without falling. "Apology accepted," she said at last. Grant nodded. "No drama, no need for more. Some things didn't require speeches." At the next Freedom Motion Center opening, they unveiled a new wall, a mosaic made from hundreds of tiles, each one hand decorated by a child who had taken part in the program. In the center of the mosaic were 3 larger tiles, one with a small boy's footprint etched into clay, one with a dancer's silhouette in motion, and one with a quote, "Real power isn't teaching others to follow you. It's learning to follow those who've found their own way." As cameras flashed and crowds applauded, Ethan walked to the front, holding a mic almost as tall as he was. "I used to think I was broken," he said, "but really, I just needed space to move my way." He paused, smiled, and pointed toward Maya and Grant. "They gave it to me. And now, I'm giving it to you." Tears glistened in more than a few eyes. 1 year later, Ethan was invited to speak at a national conference on inclusive education. He wore a sharp navy blazer, 1 brace, and a silver pin that read "Freedom." Backstage, he found Maya waiting. "Nervous?" she asked. "Nope. You practiced your speech?" "Half of it," he said with a smirk. "The rest, all freestyle. Just like you're dancing," she said with a proud smile. He grinned. "Exactly." Then, he glanced around. "Where's Dad?" Maya tilted her head, and just then, Grant appeared behind them. He wore no suit, just jeans, a gray sweater, and a quiet look in his eyes. "You're here," Ethan said. "I always will be," Grant answered, and gently fixed the collar on Ethan's blazer. "Go show them what movement really means." If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like the video, and comment below with where you're watching from. Because stories like this remind us, when someone is finally seen, believed in, and given space to lead, the impossible becomes possible.